would you regard him as? Would you regard him as average, below average, any kind of detail? What do you get from it? And then I'm going to go to a example in the Quran, and because on one side it's like you feel sometimes like Christians believe that it's obvious that the Quran is made up, and then on the other side you have challenges, intellectual challenges from the Quran itself that says whoever constructed this book, if it was I mean, the Orientalists would go as far, those people who would recognize some of the linguistic aspects of the Quran, they would go as far as to say he was a genius because of certain things that were confronted in when reading the text, the arrangement of things. So what would be your do you think he was a genius? Do you think he was just lucky that what do you think in terms of it?
I don't know how. I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer the question.
Okay, no, that's
no. Just let me think for a moment, so I can. But
because how can we really know?
I mean, I don't think I have enough information to really look at it. Okay, so.
So I wanna just get your reaction to a verse here. Okay, so that Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the cow, it's the second chapter, it's the longest chapter, and it's one of the latest it's one of the surahs that were revealed later, closer to the death in Medina of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in this huge chapter that's so long, and this so many people have tried to memorize it, and it's when you get there, because Muslims memorize from the end of the Quran to the beginning most of the time. That Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the cow, it's the.
It was feedback. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Go ahead, brother.
What was I saying? Oh, yes.
You want me to mute my mic, and then is that
No, it was my fault over here. No, don't worry.
Okay, so for this surah here, what's interesting is that if you count up all the verses in the whole entire surah, and then split that number in half, you get to the middle of that surah. Right, and so the middle verse of that surah is surah. It's let's see, it's 143. So and then the total number is 286. So in that verse, now we're looking at this through a kind of a book perspective, because we can open up a book and go, count the number of verses and go right to the middle and investigate. And I'm not saying that this was something done immediately during the time of the past or even now. I'm saying that this type of the way I'm putting it to you is it's really unprecedented. There was no Muslim scholars in the past talking about the middle of Surah Baqarah as though it's some type of theological basis for anything. It's just something interesting. So if you cut the number, if you cut this chapter into basically two halves, you come to a 143. In that verse, it says, "And thus we have made you ummatan wasata." So in Arabic, ummah is a nation, and wasata means middle, a middle nation. So what do you find that intriguing at all? That right in the middle of the verse, right in the middle of the chapter, God is saying that He has made of the middle nation, and the word middle is in the middle of this long chapter. What do you attribute that to? The intelligence? Do you think that Muhammad, he meant to do that, and he was paying so much attention to all of these details and never mentioning it?
Off the top of my head,
I can hear him. What he's saying.
He said something about.
I would like to just ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
Before I try to answer it or at least express an opinion. Basically, with the development of the Quran, who arranged the verses, or gave the verse numbers? Because I have read that if you go to other certain Qurans, the verse numberings are a bit different with it. So you're going on with these verses that are, shall we say, probably more modern than maybe some of the more.
Now, okay. Well, I would say
ancient Qurans, but ones that, yes. like with the Bible, okay, the verse numbers came much later, and with both the Old and New Testament, like the chapter numbers. For example, at one time, 1st and 2nd Samuel were one book, 1st and 2nd Kings were one book. And the reason they did that was because, it was written on a scroll, and the scrolls could be only so long. And then for what they thought convenience sake, they put in chapters just so you could find something easier. And so I'm just wondering whether or not you see this type of development in the Quran, so that when you're talking about a passage in the Quran, that you can say, well, it's verse
in a certain place, right?
No,
I understand what exactly where you would find a question like that from, and definitely it's a great question. So from of course, the little bit of knowledge over the little bit of span I've been on this earth, I've been able to gather that, number one, the placement of every verse of where they're at is it was always a very important issue. And I would even say that even the numbers of the verses inside each chapter was meticulously noted, even by God himself, because God says to the prophet, he says, وَأَتَيْنَاكَ الْمَثَانِ وَالْقُرْآنَ الْعَظِيمِ, which means we have given you the 7 oft-repeated verses, which is, what are the 7 verses Muslims always say? It's the first chapter of the Quran, which is Al-Fatiha, the opening of the book. We read it in our prayers. So God is mentioning the number of verses. We have given you the 7 often repeated verses, wal-Quran al-Azim, and the glorious Quran itself, the whole thing. So I'm only drawing attention that in the Quran itself, the number of the verses are important. The placement of the verses are even more highlighted in their importance in the Hadith. So if you gather,
when I've looked at when I've looked at ancient, Qurans, like the I don't see a lot of verse numbering. I mean, you have the diacritical marks that are added over a period of time.
No, of course not. Of course.
And then it seems that the verses come later. I'm not arguing about the surahs, but the verses.
Yeah, well, that's what
I'm looking at.
I mentioned that.
Actually, verse. You see this Quran?
Yes.
This is one that Hijaz gave me.
Okay.
Hijaz. He gave me this.
Mm-hmm.
And they have, when I'm looking at the passage you refer to, it starts at verse 142 and goes to 145. Oh, I'm sorry, 140, 42 and 43. So it looks like the editors, you're broken these up as like, is each ayat, is it what? Like in this passage you're talking about,
yeah.
To get the overall context, do I begin at verse 142, or do I just look, or can I just take?
No, but there's no context. There's no I'm not bringing the context as a miraculous evidence. I'm just saying that isn't it strange that in the middle of this verse, in the middle of this huge long chapter, which Muhammad never, written down himself and calculated, to that extent. But the word middle comes in the middle of the longest chapter of the Quran. So it's not like the context that I'm drawing your attention to. It's just that the word itself is present. And for me, I think that, there's a recent study of the Quran called ring composition, where basically scholars are saying that they're noting that in every chapter of the Quran, and the Quran itself, it has a kind of it, it's basically the beginning and the middle and the end are all very important in its placement. How a chapter begins is often has it often has a correlation with the end, and then the middle of it also is kind of like a bringing together of the both sides. Now we can see in this chapter itself that right in the middle of the chapter there's a strange word, which is the word middle. Now that could be a coincidence, fine, but if you go, for example, to another verse in the Quran, which is Ayatul Kursi, the verse of the footstool, and this verse is said to be the greatest verse in the Quran. It's 255, if I'm not mistaken, in the same chapter. So this verse is made up of 10 clauses, and even in this one
Wait a minute.
verse,
Did you say how many verses did you say is in there?
Say it again. I couldn't hear him. What did he say?
He asked a question. I didn't quite catch it either.
What did you say, Stephen? We couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask. I was going to ask about, basically, you said there's 246. You said there's 246 verses, right?
No. And Surah Al-Baqarah, because I don't memorize the numbers.
286. I'm sorry. 286.
Yes, and then if you cut that in half.
If you divide 286 by
Yes.
by 2, that's 243. But the middle point would be the very first word of the last word of the first verse. And you would have to have the exact number of words.
No. Listen, the whole entire chapter is 286, right? So what's half of
Yes.
that? 143.
43, yes.
There it is. Now you're on track. So 143 is the middle verse of that whole long 286 long verse long chapter. So and then in that middle verse, the word middle comes up. So it seems that the middle of things in the Quran have a great significance, and I wanted to draw your attention to one verse itself and how it displays ring composition as a miraculous sign. Now, if you can bear with me just for 60 seconds, I want to explain that verse. So if you go to 255 in the Quran, I'm gonna go with you. Could we go there? I'm sorry if I'm taking over here. Is that okay? 255 of Quran, I believe it is. Let's see. Yes. Okay.
No, we lost him somehow.
Oh, he ran? No, just kidding. No, he's here. He's here somewhere. I see his.
No, he's out.
Oh, he's out.
Yeah, he's.
He said it's getting hot in here. I'm out of here.
Yeah, he might be just.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's Alhamdulillah. It's someone could say that it's just a coincidence that here the Quran is talking about the middle, and then lo and behold, the middle is in the verse. Yeah. I was doing something. I was trying to get some feeds going, but I was partially listening. But Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Wow. I was gonna give him an even clearer example of how the middle of things.
Yeah.
And have it just shows the great detail of the composer of the Quran, and that's why I wanted to gauge where does he think that this is coming from? Is he going to sit here and admit that Muhammad was a genius? I guess that's a start, right? That's a start. But we can't say that there's no great detail being paid to these verses and the placement of words.
Okay.
Yeah, he should be back soon.
Yeah, there he is. Okay. Welcome back, Stephen.
I'm not sure if he hears us yet.
It says his audio is connecting now.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We just lost you somehow. But welcome back.
Anyways, I wanted to look at You divide, if you had 247 verses.
No, not
I
247.
know, I know how many verses there are.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I know how many, if you had 247 verses, then you would have a middle point. But you're dividing, the verse numbers are even. So the middle point has to be at the exact end of the 143rd. Okay, that's the exact, that is.
Oh, okay. So it would be more apparently a miracle had that word been at the end.
I would be, let's put it this way, I would be a little bit more impressed with the argument, but I don't think the
So
argument.
that's not middle enough for you? I mean,
Well, if you're talking about precision, which is what you brought up, I mean.
no, but I'm not saying that the Quran is made for you to look at precise, to derive faith from a precise word. But
Okay, I just don't find it a sound argument. Okay.
I wonder if there's a possibility, which I don't know how many words are in Surah
Well, see,
Al-Baqarah.
that's
but
it.
Yeah,
That's it.
I wonder if the
Shabir
word.
has. Look at Shabir has something that he's been pushing for the last couple of years on the miraculous numbers in the Quran. There was a Christian evangelist, I won't say he was an apologist, who was pushing something about looking at miraculous numbers in the Bible and things like that, and doing a bunch of gymnastics with verses and stuff like that. And it sounds impressive, but when you really begin to think about it, it's a terrible argument.
Well, what I was going to say is, I wonder how many words are in Surah Al-Baqarah, and if the word middle, I have no clue. I'm just throwing this out there. But if the word middle happens to fall right in the middle of
I think that would be a lot tougher, only because linguists would then begin to argue, because of course you got pronouns, you got nouns, you got particles, how do you divide it? Is a pronoun just the word he, a word when it comes on the back of a verb, or it's very difficult, but that's a great question. But let me
that's what
yes.
If Kenny, Kenny, I would be more impressed if you took all the number of words from the beginning to the end of the surah, and you got down to the very middle, and had the word middle there. I would say, hey, yeah, okay, that argument would be a little bit more. Again, I don't know that it would be convincing enough, but it would be I would say an interesting argument.
Well, sure, yes. Absolutely. I wonder if there's a way to find out how many. Obviously, someone in the world's got to know how many words.
Yeah, I'm sure there's.
And of course, it would
you guys are the Islamic scholars, not me.
Ask
a guy like Shabir.
Yeah, well,
look at Ijaz.
I wonder if they know that. I'd like to ask either one of those guys that question, if they know how many words are in. Of course, it'd have to be the words in the Arabic, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Look, the guy I talked to, Christian, I talked about you. I think he was using an English translation of it, and like I say, it just wouldn't work.
Sure, I agree. The English translation is not going to add up.
And it wouldn't even work in Greek because of the textual variants and the manuscripts and things like that. But like I say, I'm not really all that impressed with this numerology, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I think Brother Shabir he talks about the number 19.
Yeah.
He's
well. Let me take a look at something here. So now, besides any numbers, we're not looking at numbers because we're just going to look at one verse. Now, it's interesting to know that in this verse, there's 10 clauses. Now, again, I'm trying to stay away from that number. It's just a fact. We're not going to say. So this is 255. Surah Baqarah 255. It's just one verse that has 10 basically sentences inside of one verse, and this is a great example of what scholars are calling ring composition. And it basically, in short, it's to say that the beginning has a relation to the end, and the middle has a relation to the beginning and the end. and they call it ring composition. So in this verse, it's striking that basically every single sentence mirrors the opposite part of the verse. For example, the beginning of it, the first sentence, has something to do with the last sentence. What are those? So basically, the verse says, "Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum." God, Allah. There's no God but Him, the living, the self-sustaining. Or this is my quick translation on the fly because I'm only seeing the Arabic here.
Yeah,
But if you look at the very end, the last sentence in this one verse, what do you see? More names of God. So the beginning of it is talking about God's attributes, and at the end, it says, وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ, and He is the high and the most almighty one. So you got the living and the self-sustaining in the first part of this verse, and then at the very end you got the high one, the mighty one. So it's His names. Now, if you look at the next verse, if you look at the next sentence after the first sentence, it has something to do with the sentence before the last sentence. Do you see how we're working our way into the middle, each one mirroring the other? Now what's the correlation? لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Sleep doesn't overtake God, nor does slumber. Now, if you go down to the sentence right before the last sentence, it says, وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا, and it doesn't tire Him to protect the heavens and the earth, to protect them both. حِفْظُهُمَا. So what do you have here? Basically, the correlation is sleep and slumber not overtaking God. And if you go like that all the way to the middle of this one verse, it says, يَعْلَمُ, He knows what is before them and what is behind them. So it's kind of like right in the middle, it talks about the beginning of before, what was before it and what was behind it. And throughout this whole verse, the beginning is mirroring the end. And you can literally, I mean, I would do the whole thing so you can see that.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand. Yes. I understand the argument. And again, that's what they call chiasm. It's like A, B, C, C, B, A.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Like a mirroring.
And you can find that in the New Testament. You can find it in the Old Testament. You can find all sorts of things like that. It's just a literary style that does not necessarily mean inspiration or anything. It's just a literary style.
No, I'm not claiming that by itself. Me just going around.
No, but like I say, it's just a literary style. I don't know, and it may be good, or it may be poetic, or prose, but it's just a literary style. You find it in all sorts of literature.
You said that the New Testament has that type of style. Do you have an example of that? As a writer, I'm just intrigued by.
Second Philippians Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 11.
5 through 11.
Yeah, it's basically the Carmen Christi.
Okay.
And that's just again off the top of my head.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a hymn. It's quoted. I quote.
Okay, just take a look at it. I'm very intrigued by the whole.
No, just take this as friendly advice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'll give my personal opinion. Okay, we'll put it that way. That's better. Personal opinion. I don't find those arguments at all convincing, because basically it's just a literary style. It doesn't necessarily argue for or against inspiration either way, or how good the guy was or not.
Well, but you would agree though that the opposite, for example, a poorly written book couldn't be from God, right? Because if God writes a book and a human writes a book, I think there would be a huge difference. So just
depends on what you mean by poorly written. Because see, one of the things that happens here in Christians and Muslims is very often when we talk about things like inspiration and transmission and inerrancy, is that we talk past one another. Because your idea of inspiration and preservation are much different than mine. with it. And and so you can have a book where the grammar is atrocious, and yet that doesn't denote whether it's inspired or not.
Part of the brilliance behind the Quran is at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, poetry in the Arabic language was very, very prominent. That's the higher your level of being able to recite poetry primarily by memory at that time was, it gave you a certain status in the area, and in Arabia. And so, but when the Quran came about, they were so impressed and so intrigued by what the Quran was saying and how it was being said, that they actually started saying that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a magician. He was working some kind of magic. So even the most gifted linguists and gifted poets of the time were just astounded to the point that they couldn't comprehend how.
Yeah, well, but because I don't know Arabic,
yeah,
I can't address it. I mean,
sure.
all I can do is I can look at someone who might say, "Oh, it's horrible," there's lots of grammatical mistakes.
Yeah.
Or I can listen to someone who says, "No, it's perfectly." I mean, I would have to. I can't make a judgment on that.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to convey to you
I mean, how much, Kenny? How much Arabic do you know?
Well, I recite all my prayers in Arabic, so
Yeah.
I can't sit and hold a Arabic conversation with someone just in common
Okay.
common
You
conversation.
know this? Did you learn this in school? Frere shaka, dormez-vous.
Yeah,
You know that?
I know
You
it.
know kids in kindergarten that don't know French, and yet they can go through the whole song. And I've seen,
Yeah.
and I have seen children, small children, memorizing the Quran, but it's rhythmic, and they have to, as they get older, learn how to, what it means.
Well, yeah, that's
In other words, I mean,
that's understandable.
so you can memorize something, but unless you know how to do the
Well,
exegesis
yeah.
of a passage,
well, that's
I mean, I
that's
have to
part of
rely
it.
on this.
Yeah, that's part of it. So that's one of the miracles of the Quran is that Allah has promised to preserve the Quran, and so obviously it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad through his memory. And as you just mentioned, we have children that are learning to recite the Quran, and some of them learn to recite the entire Quran.
Yeah.
And so many
Okay,
millions of
then
Muslims.
why do we have so many different translations of it?
Well, a translation is just simply a translation. I mean, one thing we have to understand is that the Quran is only the Quran whenever it's being recited. It's only the Quran in the Arabic language. And so the translations are just simply a means to try to express what's being stated in the Arabic. So what I did through Michigan University, I took what's classes called analytical tafsir, where we go through literally every verse of the Quran, and we break down what analytically what is it actually saying, what is the Arabic telling us, and what is it saying. So it is an obligation for Muslims to understand and study the tafsir and the meaning of what's being recited. So that it's a twofold. What it does is it engages the Muslim constantly as we learn more and more of the Quran, learn to recite more and more of the verses. At the same time, we should also be studying, finding out what is it that we're saying, in what's knowing not just how to recite it, but what does it actually mean. And so in one way, the Quran is being preserved just like Allah promised that it would be, and in the second, it's engaging the Muslims in a continuous effort to seek knowledge and to continuously engage themselves in the consciousness of our Creator by seeking knowledge of the Quran.
And let me just say something, and this is not to win the argument, but for me it was interesting when I became a Muslim that I found that, number one, the Arabic language, learning the Arabic language, not learning it, but having to pray in it, no matter who you are, unless you have a true something holding you back in terms of your intelligence from learning it. Then there's ways that you can say other shorter statements in Arabic if you can't memorize the whole prayer. For those who are not able to, and if they can't do that, then God knows that their language will suffice them. But for the vast majority of people, God has given good intelligence to, and they're able to at least learn their prayer in Arabic. Now, why is that important, or how can that be of a benefit? Wouldn't it be just as well if a person could pray in his own language? Now, in Islam, there's two kinds of prayers. There's dua, which is just invocation. You can say it in your own language. You can pray it anywhere. You just call on God. You say, God, help me, in your language. And that's called dua. And that's anytime acceptable. Then there's the 5 prayers that you have to come to and do in a certain way, washing yourself before. Now, the Arabic language serves as a unifier in that instance. That way, if I go to any country in the world, I'm not going to walk into a mosque in China and then they're praying their prayers in Chinese. Then I just got to sit to the side. I don't got to go to, Indonesia and not understand what I can go to any mosque and I'm guaranteed anywhere in the world to understand them. And if I know Arabic, I will find someone there who studied the language also and to communicate more. But at least I can worship with those people. Yeah. So it unifies the whole entire.
Yeah, the Roman Catholic Church used that argument basically with Latin.
Well, to expound on your question for me, Stephen, about how much Arabic that I know, I'm also what's called a khatib. I don't know if you know what a khatib is.
Something wrote a book, isn't it?
Well, a khatib is
Kataba's book.
Well, that's partly, but a khatib is one who also, like I give the khutbah for the Jummah prayer, for Jummah. So I'll go and I'll actually give a sermon at various masjids in and around Houston, right? And so part of that is, even though I'm not a fluent Arabic speaker as far as being able to sit down and hold a conversation, but what I do is when, for one, I'm leading the prayer and I'm reciting the Quran in Arabic, and also whatever I'm speaking about, I have to seek knowledge about what it is that the Quran is actually saying. So what this has done is open the door for one, like the brother had mentioned, it brings about a unity amongst the Muslims where we're all reciting the same verses, and if I make a mistake as I'm leading the prayer, the Muslims behind me are going to correct me, and and at the same time I have knowledge enough to know what the Arabic is telling us, because I've studied and researched and studied the tafsir of the verses that I'm going to go and I'm going to speak about and give the sermon about. And so I'm covered on both sides. I'm covered in regards to learning to recite the Quran properly, and also in the tafsir about what the actual interpretation of the Quran is saying in my own language. So in regards to that, the Arabic, us reciting the Quran in Arabic during our prayers, that's a part of our worship. And we also, as Muslims, and I always tell this to new Muslims, just take one step at a time. People who've accepted Islam and they don't know how to recite any of the prayers in Arabic initially, I just tell them, hey, look, take one step at a time, recite it in your own language for the time being, but make a constant effort. Don't put a whole lot of pressure on yourself, but make a constant effort to try to learn at least to recite the prayers in Arabic. Because just like the brother said, when we go and I'm standing beside a brother from Indonesia or China or Pakistan or Iraq or wherever, we understand what we're saying whenever we're reciting the Quran and reciting the prayers. And then once again, like the brother said, in our personal prayer, the dua, we just pray in our own language. And
okay. Well, that's interesting. Listen, guys, I have to go now. Could you tell Hijaz? Hey, let me know what's happening with it. Like if he wants to arrange it online, we need to talk on it so that I can, because I'll have to make some. I'll probably have to change the date.
Okay.
With that, but just let him know that just to give me a heads up on it.
Okay, what topic we are going to be debating?
Oh, it's on the crucifixion.
The crucifixion. Okay.
Historicity of the crucifixion.
Yeah, he mentioned it to me just a couple of days ago, and so I'll try to touch base with him today.
Yeah, like he hasn't. like I sent him an email. I should check my email, but anyways, I got to I've got to run. So you guys have a
Okay.
nice day.
You too.
Yes,
You
And
too.
try and keep me informed if you're having this. I'll try to. If you
Are-
have
are
this
you
on a
on-
regular basis, I won't promise I can come all the time. I'll
Well,
try
I
to drop in.
I'm not sure if you're on my friends list right now on Facebook,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I personally, I try to avoid all debating on Facebook. I don't mess with any of that. I don't like to get involved in all that back and forth via text.
Well,
But,
just let me know what's happening, okay?
but yeah, if you're on my friends list, if you're not,
Yeah.
please send me a friend
Well,
request and vice
yeah.
versa. That way I can tag you whenever we have shows. I'll
Okay.
be sure to tag you. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
God
You have
bless
a good
you.
day.
thank
All
you.
right. Have a good one.
All right. Yeah, so I seen you put a post up, right? So maybe other people are gonna be coming.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Man, he got out of here pretty quick. He said, "Nah, they double teaming me."
Yeah, I think I wasn't trying to, but he
No, you know, you were really,
just doing
no,
that really. But
no matter how nice you are, what we're saying is actually hard hitting because we're coming at him so gently, but he knows that it's very hard to sit here and say, yeah, Muhammad was a genius. He had a book that has all these things in it that are so close to miraculous, but they're just coincidences.
yeah.
As we keep piling them on, it's for a
And I
Christian,
brought up.
there,
I looked up Philippians. I thought it said Philippians 2 verses 5 through 11, but I don't see an example of. I forgot the phrase that he used to describe it. But
Yeah,
I
let me check
don't
that.
see that.
Also. That's a great. I forgot.
Let me read it. Did he say Philippians 2 5 through 11?
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty sure he did. That's what I mean. I went straight to it. The Bible was sitting right here beside me, so I picked it up. But I don't see. Let me read through it just briefly. It's just okay. It says, "Let his mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore God also has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, and of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth." So I don't see where.
I'm not sure what he was getting at with that. I guess we got to ask him.
Well, he might have made a mistake on the
No,
chapter verse,
no.
but which is what the thing is. I've never heard of anyone make the claim. I've never heard of anyone make the claim about the Bible doing that.
Yeah.
Making the what's it called with the first sentence and the last sentence? What's it referred to?
He said
Huh?
the Carmen Christie, something like that.
Well, yeah, that's Carmen Christie, but what's the you given the description of what the Quran is doing?
Ring compilation, a ring composition.
Ring composition?
Yes.
Ring?
That's what it's called. Yeah, that was
Okay, yeah. I didn't hear that. Did you hear that in the verses that I just read of the Bible?
No, we need him really to explain that next time.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up there, but maybe he misquoted the verses. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but
Yeah.
I did post it posted in a few different groups, and we're actually going live on YouTube right now.
Come right away, or do they always trickle in little by little?
Oh no! Well, usually we have set times, and I do it in advance, and so people come in. Bam! We've had lately 16, 20 different people on at any given time. So,
Wow, are there people available now? Because we can come back if you want in about an hour.
We're gonna. I've actually got some other things that I need to take care of right now. I didn't plan on getting on today, but it was a good time to touch base with Steve and Atkins.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, if anything, we can open back up tomorrow if you like. But yeah, I'll be in contact. Inshallah.
Sure. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Just try to share. I'll send you the uh, the Facebook link, and just share it, and try to invite people if they would like to come on and engage in the conversation. I'll send you the rules also. That way they
Yeah.
can see. Look, we're not trying to just lure you into a situation where you're going to be attacked.
Right.
we're just trying to engage in civil conversation. So I'll
So you're
send you a
saying
couple of
you
links that you can share with. Huh?
or
Well, no,
you
I can leave it open, but I've got some things that I need to do that it might kind of interfere.
oh,
But I'll send you some links to where you can try to set it up.
okay, gotcha.
Sometimes trying to get like that way we can allow people to have time to prepare and have a lot of times where they can actually engage.
Right, right. And that's
It
for
is
that's
it is fun to do this for the moment, huh?
that's for tomorrow, right? What are you saying today?
What's tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'm moderating the debate between Nadir Ahmed and Dr. Michael Brown. So,
Okay. All right, no
that's
problem.
at 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So after that, um, we'll try to probably go on like 5 p.m. my time, 6 p.m. your time.
Oh yeah, that sounds good. All right, sounds good.
All
All
right,
right,
and
brother.
I'll make some posts about it, and we'll try to make that happen, inshallah.
All right, bro. Salam
Because
alaikum.
it's during the week, some people aren't quarantined, so they may be, they still have to go to work and all that. So we'll just have to, we'll play it by ear. But all last week we had people on those days, so we'll try to make it happen, inshallah.
Oh, okay.
All right,
All right.
brother. So just stay in touch with me, and we'll, if you have something going on that you want to have a heated, spur of the moment discussion, we can try to do that too if need be.
All right.
All right.
Inshallah. Salam alaikum. Talk
All
to you
right.
soon, bro.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so you've been watching Kenny Bowman Live on Consider This TV, where truth is made clear from falsehood. We had a discussion with Christian apologist Stephen Atkins. Have debated Stephen Atkins on the topic of the crucifixion um, in the past, and he has a debate with Ijaz Ahmed coming up. It's supposed to be a live discussion. It's supposed to be a live debate, rather than it's supposed to be taking place on April 18th in Canada. But we have to do it online, so I have to talk to Ijaz about possibly doing it on this platform. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, so be looking for the links. Send an invite to me on a friend request on Facebook. Look up Kenny Bowman. Send me a friend request if you like. Follow me on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. And once again, this is Kenny Bowman Live. Consider This TV, and also the book Consider Islam. And in the forthcoming book, everything is test truth to be made clear from falsehood. It should be out by the fall, inshallah, God willing. And also the second edition of Consider Islam should be out this summer. So I thank you for listening, and I'll leave you by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I do bear witness to no God other than Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his final servant and seal.